Hello, hello. Welcome back to our next conversation as part of the inaugural Empowerthon. And today we have Laurie Genevish from My Ideal College with us. Laurie, good morning. Thank you so much for being with
Hey.
us.
Oh, happy to be here.
I love having amazing folks come in and share their knowledge. So let me take a step back. For those of you, maybe this is the first time that you're tuning into us. As I mentioned, this is the inaugural fundraiser for the Parent Tween Connection. Maybe I didn't mention that. I don't know. I don't remember what I've said at this point. It feels really early in the morning. But the Parent Tween Connection, which is the greater entity, where parents go when they don't know where to go. We are building a network of professionals who have all kinds of amazingly valuable information so that we can introduce parents to each other for moral support, but also to these professionals so that you can find the right fit when you need support for yourself as the parent or for your kids. And the Parent Tween Foundation is our charitable nonprofit that fills the financial gap, or at least aims to bridge that financial gap between families and the professionals and the support that they need. So we just got our approval around the holidays between 2022 and 23. And so thank you. So this is our first big fundraiser. So it's part summit, part yes, please. If you get nuggets and you get aha moments, and Laurie's got amazing information, and you're like, oh, I'm really glad I know that. We're going to straight up shamelessly ask you to follow the link in the description to say thank you to her for donating her time by making a donation to the Parent Tween Foundation. So with that, today, we're live streaming into our Facebook group, our LinkedIn page, and our YouTube channel. And we're fielding questions through our Facebook group. So if you're not there yet, come on over and join us. It's simply Parent Tween Connection. There's one T on there. And I do have it open on the other monitor. So if you join us, I can welcome you in. You can tune in and ask questions. Because today we're talking about what do you do as a parent when college isn't the next best step for your high school students. Maybe they just don't like school. Maybe they don't know where they're headed. Maybe they're just being ornery. That's probably the lesser likelihood. Right? But the reality is like we've created this culture, Laurie, haven't we? At least here in the US, that college is the way you have to go.
Yep.
And it's I mean, I've been an SAT and ACT coach for 25 years. So there's an aspect where I have bought into and perpetuated that culture to some extent as well. But there's just a lot of kids that it's not the next best step.
You're right. Exactly. Exactly. Even my own, I have two boys, and the firstborn it wasn't the right step for him, and we knew it and we didn't push it because we knew if we force this a semester or two later, he probably would have dropped out, and that's part of one of the biggest mistakes parents make is like, because like you said, we perpetuate this culture, like just go get a degree. Like I
Mhm.
talk to parents and they're like, we just want them, they'll figure it out once they get there. Let's just get them in there because if they don't go right now, they'll never go back. And that's not true, you know,
Mhm.
and two, it may not be the right fit for them. I mean, it could be a trade. It could be maybe they need to take a gap year, maybe the military,
Mhm.
and so as parents, we need to honor where our teen is at this point and is it the right step for them. One of my favorite stories I used to read my kids when they were little is Leo the late bloomer. It was this little tiger, and the dad kept saying, when's he going to do this? Mom just said, be patient, and eventually he bloomed. So
So, would you say that there is so in a family where like college is the expectation, like I know in my family, the message that I got very clearly and I think pretty well verbatim from my mom was if you want to go to college, you're going to have to pay for it yourself. And by the way, you're expected to go to college.
mm.
Right? So, I mean, let's just take the dollars and cents out of it. I was in a
Yeah.
situation, and I mean, thankfully, I did want to go to college. Not that I got a degree that I use, but whatever. I grew a lot. I recognize that the college process is about maturation and growth, not just academically. But There are other ways
Mhm.
to experience similar aspects of maturation and growth. But do you think for parents that have this expectation, like maybe they are college graduates, maybe they each even have higher, post-bac degrees, and they expect that college is the next thing,
Mhm.
why is it so hard for them to step back and go, wait a second, maybe this isn't the next best step?
Um, I think some of it is what they hear, like the only way you'll make a lot of money is if you have a college degree,
Hmm.
which isn't the case. And I think some of it maybe also ego.
Hmm.
Yeah, I was actually a friend and I were talking the other day, and of course now it's graduation time, and I
Hmm.
don't know about where you live, but all the neighborhoods have this congratulation graduates, and they have the kids' names, and some of them have the schools they're going to, right? And what how shameful. I mean, or this pressure of my kid needs to go here and that
Hmm.
type of thing.
Do you think there's like, it
So I
almost
think
feels
it's
like there's
hard.
I almost feel like there's maybe a grief process. Like I know some of my friends have navigated their children coming out as identifying in the LGBTQIA community. And for the
Hmm.
parents, they're going, okay, well, a wedding isn't going to look like I always thought a wedding was going to look like. Or,
Yeah.
um, you know, family, kiddos growing up and going, I don't want a family of my own. Like I don't want to have children where mom or dad always wanted to be grandparents, right? And it's just like
Hmm.
it's different than what you expected. And so do you think there's a similar kind of like grief of like letting go of that expectation for some families?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I love the way you tied it that it is a grief process, right? Because I mean, even myself, when your kids are born, you immediately you think, oh, they're going to be the next doctor, lawyer, president. They're going to be this grandest things, and you shape their life in that way, right? You're like, oh, I need to get you involved in a lot of activities to help you figure out what you're going to like, and so it's what 16 years or plus of uh, preparing them for that step that you have in your mind, and it can be very daunting and challenging,
Mhm.
because it's like, well, now what, you know
Right. Right. Okay, so I know you mentioned already that like one of the biggest mistakes that parents can make is to be like, just get to college and you'll figure it out there, which is, I mean, that's a pricey proposition, number one.
exactly.
But then also, if you have a kiddo, like you're saying, who does it because it's what mom and dad expect, and then they end up dropping out, there's an intangible emotional impact, like psychological impact on the kiddo who drops out. Because who wants to be a dropout, right? Like there's a cultural influence on that as well. So I like that you
Hmm.
identified that just kind of pushing them in and be like, figure it out isn't necessarily setting them up for success. What
Right.
other mistakes do you see parents making completely unaware, right? Like the
Right.
disclosure, like this is not like you're intentionally trying to screw things up. Like that's not the point. But like even the best intentions sometimes don't come off the best.
Right. Well, I also too, because again, okay, so you have a teen that maybe college isn't the right fit, but you don't know what to do, right?
Mhm.
So then you're like, okay, why don't you try this? Why don't you try this? Why don't you try that? Which can be good, but it may not be the best for the team. Like, you know, you're an accountant, so you're like, well, maybe you'll like accounting. Let's try that. So trying to, you know, force fit them in a role versus having conversations with them about it. um, you know, uh, I use assessments in my work, and parents always go, "Oh, what aptitude test do you use?" I don't use an aptitude test because just because you're good at something, which again, as a parent, I would too. What are you good at? You know, but just because you're good at something doesn't necessarily mean you want that as a career.
Mm-hmm.
So instead, I would, talk to your teen about, what kinds of things interest you that what kinds of things are you interested in, and why are you interested in them?
Mm-hmm.
Do you like working with your hands? Do you like, you know, what careers do you think might incorporate those things? And then try to help them find people to talk to in those careers,
Well, and
for
it
that.
seems like this isn't going to be like a brand new thought to the parent, right? Because you've watched your kiddo for 14, 15, 16 years, and you see that
Right,
they're really excited about cars. Well, like, hey,
right.
if I already know that you're excited about cars, what kinds of opportunities are there in the automotive industry? I mean, there's car sales, there's auto brokering, there's auto detailing. I know a guy who's in his 20s who's making a killing doing auto
Hmm.
detailing, and he loves it. He doesn't have a boss. He's his own boss. He has his own business.
Yep,
And
yep.
he's got his own truck. Like, he worked to get the truck so that he had everything that he needed. He's getting great reviews. He's getting booked out weeks and weeks and weeks, and not just because we have had, as they say, biblical amounts of rain here in Colorado the last 2 weeks. But like, he's getting booked out because he's good at what he does. He's getting repeat customers, but he's also working with a savvy financial planner so that,
Hmm.
because I think part of what scares parents is like, but you're not going to have a 401k if you have your own business, or retirement, or all the things. Like,
Right.
there are other ways that we can explore to help set them up. And you know what? I don't think this gentleman went to college. Yeah, based on
Hmm.
what I know about him, I'm gonna guess he probably would have hated it, just because he doesn't
Yeah,
seem like the guy to sit still and pay attention. Like, he's got to be moving and out and doing things and have new stuff.
yeah. Or also too, well, I want them to have the college experience.
Mm,
It's like there's other ways to get experience. And also, I mean, think of how the world has changed since we went to college, right? I
mhm.
mean, oh my goodness. Like, heck, a year or so ago, kids weren't even attending classes. They were doing them all virtually, so
Absolutely.
where's the college experience there? And yet the
Mhm,
parents were still paying the full tuition price, even though
mhm.
they weren't even actually going to class.
Absolutely.
Um, so to want them to go just for the experience is not, it's again a costly thing for experience,
I was
very
gonna say it's
costly
another
thing.
pricey proposition, isn't it?
Yeah. And, and the thing is too, the military also, can be, for some kids, it can be a great thing. And they don't have to go full blown in. They could do the reserves, and I know it's, believe me, when actually my son is the one who said, we're going to do it. And it just shocked the heck out of us. Ended up being the best thing he could have ever done for himself.
Yeah.
So I think as parents, we need to be open to them as well. When they say something, don't shoo shoo it. Don't be like, why do you want to do that? I'm like, that type of thing. It's like, oh, that's interesting. Can you tell me more about it? Like,
Mhm,
what about that interests you?
mhm.
And a good friend of mine, actually, who's a child psychologist and works with teens and families, she says when you sit down with your teen, don't sit in front of them and say, "Okay, we need to have this conversation. Let's all sit around the table,"
Mhm.
because when you're sitting face to face, they feel judged, they feel all this.
Well, it's very
Have these
confrontational.
Exactly. Have these conversations when you're doing natural things together, like maybe go for a walk, cook dinner together, do something, you
Mhm.
know, together, and just bring in some questions. Don't be like, okay, got all these questions. And if they say something, make a note of it, and then bring it back up at a later point. So
Mhm.
make it happen naturally versus, all right, we got to figure out what you're going to do with the rest of your
Right.
life now. So, yeah.
So I've heard a lot of families talk about like car time, especially if they're driving their kids to sports or rehearsals or practice or something. Car time
Yeah.
can be really good, or road trips can be really good. Um,
Yep.
And I want to bring in a thought that another career counselor or career professional I know who only does career stuff, he talks about the concept of ikigai. He was actually another speaker. So if you're listening to this,
Yeah.
Nate Clayberg was one of our speakers earlier this week, earlier on in the Empowerthon. He talks about ikigai, and I just pulled it up to double check it. It's a Japanese concept that's a combination of what we love, like you and I were talking about,
Hmm.
what you're good at, but also what the world needs and what
Yeah.
people will pay for. And when you
Hmm.
can find the overlap of all of those things, that's what the
Right.
Japanese refer to as ikigai. And the term actually means the reason for being. And
Hmm.
so I've even heard some folks say, like, well, what difference do you want to make in the world? Like, what legacy do you want to leave? Like, what when you move across the country, what do you want people to remember about you? Or God forbid,
Right.
I mean, we're all going to pass at some point, right? Like, how do you want to be remembered? And sometimes some people
Hmm.
are like, that's a really morbid way of thinking about it. And yes, I can get that perspective. But it's also like, but if you're guided by the impact that you want to make, that gives
Hmm.
you direction.
Exactly. And it is hard. I mean, how at 16, 17 years old, right? You're still forming and shaping those things. But if you can at least have them start thinking that way, and also too, it isn't necessarily the rest of your life, right? Let's just talk about, because so far their life has been so structured, right? They go to elementary school, they go to middle school, they go to high school, and then it's whatever you want, right? And it's
Hmm.
very open ended. And how do you find that right path? And it's okay if it takes some time, but as long as you're taking steps to help identify those things.
Well, and I think the other aspect is we're still culturally in a a cognitive place of thinking that we're going to be on a singular career path for the rest of our lives.
Yeah, no.
Right? It's like we
Yeah.
know in our generation, like that's not how it goes. Some of us are on our second or our third act, even at this point, right? But
Right.
yet
Right.
somehow I feel like like there at least some families are in a space of like, but you have to go be a doctor or a lawyer. Like you have to choose one thing forever.
Right.
And you know, what if we looked at it more like, what's your next best step?
Right. And
Because
then
that's
how do
all it
you get
really is.
there?
Right.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
all right. So, are there any other mistakes that you see parents making along the way? Because we're talking about that. We're talking about having these conversations with our kids. I just want to make sure if there's any others that you see families making that we can be like, hey, be careful, like caution, caution.
Yeah. I think a lot of what we were talking about is begin with the end in mind. It's like what talk to the teen about how do they envision their life in their 20s, right? What kinds of things, where do they want to live, where do they want to, what do they see themselves doing, how do they
Mhm.
want their life to be, and then you can craft the path to get there,
Sure.
and the best way. And yeah, the biggest mistake is just forcing our kids. Well, they don't know what to do, so I'm just going to shove them into college.
Hmm.
Or we worry about that they're going to as parents, oh, they're going to wind up living on my couch in their 20s, and that's what we're trying to avoid, right? And I guess that's more about us as a parent, right,
Oh,
versus the teen. Yeah.
that makes me think of a conversation we had yesterday where it was like, are you guiding your kids based on what's best for them, or are you guiding them based out of your own fears?
Hmm. So
Wow,
that's
that's
as parents. Yeah,
yeah.
as parents, you need to think about that. Is it really about your teen, or is it about you?
Hmm.
You know, and you know, and if it is, like, what, think through that, right? So what's the worst that, well, he might, okay, probably won't. And so, yeah.
Mhm.
just being very conscientious of that you're not trying to live your life through your team.
There's that. All right. So, in terms of continuing these conversations, we've had some good questions to ask. What do you like? What are you good at? What lifestyle do you want to live? How are we going to get there? Um,
Mhm.
Being side by side or making it more in like a less confrontational, more like team, like shoulder to shoulder, we're in this together kind of approach,
Right.
that will hopefully help have these conversations with somewhat less eye rolling, as you put it,
Yeah.
that you can, they're not going to be like, oh, enough, mom, or okay, dad, I'm done. What
Yeah.
are some other ways, as we're exploring these concepts of, what do you love? What are you good at? How is that going to support the lifestyle that you'd like to live?
Yeah.
Um, what are some ways that you recommend to teenagers to explore what that path could look like outside of college?
From a perspective, I would say, thank goodness we do have the internet, right? And if there's careers you're thinking about, there's a million day in the life videos that you could talk to people and
Right.
learn more, and even putting something in the message, hey, I would love to talk to you, um, uh, if you are interested in something, like someone says, I think I'm interested in, entrepreneurship is coming up a lot for teens now, because they want that flexibility lifestyle. They don't want, a lot of teens now don't want to work in an office and all that.
Mhm.
So, all right, great. Who could you talk to, to find out, what they love about, being an entrepreneur? What do they not like? Or insert career here, you
Right.
know, and just have a conversation and to learn more,
Mhm.
and and not only will you learn more, you're also learning a valuable skill of networking,
Sure.
which is going to help you no matter what job you have.
Mhm.
And if you feel like you can't talk to your parents, find someone else, find another adult that you feel comfortable talking with
Mhm.
about these types of things.
Um, Internships are also a great way to explore. I just had one of our trusted experts in parent tween reach out to me the other day. She asked me last year, she had a kiddo that she was supporting. She's in the college admissions field, and she was like, last year, she says, hey, he's interested in business and in marketing and maybe entrepreneurship. Are you interested in having an intern? And I was like, heck yeah, I am.
Hmm.
I love mentoring and love guiding, and if I can let them see a little bit of behind the scenes and get 8-10 hours a week of some support where they're going to learn and it's going to do me good as an entrepreneur, why wouldn't I
Yep.
want to do that? So
Yep.
looking for internships, you never know who's looking for help.
Yeah, and you know what? You got to ask, right? You know, for the teens, talk to your mom and dad. Hey, can you help me find people in these areas?
Hmm.
Ask your friends' parents. Ask anyone and everyone if
Hmm.
you're interested in something, because you never know who knows who, right?
Oh my
Who will
gosh,
want the
yes.
help.
Yes.
And I think we're so used to, especially this generation, texting, and that's how you talk, and you gotta
Uh-huh.
you gotta put yourself out there. I mean, that part's never gonna go away.
Right. I was also thinking that volunteerism could be good. And volunteering is something that you can start even when your kids are young. Once a month, find a different place in town that you can go volunteer, whether it's going to pack food or whether it's at the Humane Society or whether it's I mean, out here in Colorado, there's no end of outdoor opportunities, and like hiking and
Yeah.
whatnot, but like out on the coasts, maybe it's a beach cleanup or something with an ocean conservatory, or conservation entity or something
Yeah.
like that, so that's a great way to go. I think even when the kids aren't at the point of even knowing whether college is the next best step, it's a great way to explore possible options, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. And if you're like, how do I find volunteer opportunities? I know I see on our different schools Facebook parents page, hey, we're looking for volunteer, and parents will say, oh, there's this, there's that, so that, just reaching out to parents on Facebook groups for
Mhm.
volunteer opportunities, you can find a lot of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Love it. All right. So number one, check why it is that you're feeling so upset, perhaps, about college not being the next best step for your kiddo, and check the expectations, right? And don't
Right.
just force them into college because you think they're going to figure it out, because the costs
Yes.
are really not quantifiable, I would say. I mean, yes, there's the tuition cost and the room and board, but the impact that it has on the kids psychologically is, I mean, how do you measure that, right?
Well, I do, and some parents also too, like, well, they'll get a scholarship, they're, like here, there's the Georgia Hope, and it's like, well, they're getting a full ride. It's still, yeah.
It's still, there's an emotional cost to doing things just because your parents want you to do them. Let's be honest. And
Hope is
when
not
we,
a strategy.
right, exactly. Hope is not a strategy, indeed. And so we talked about, questions to ask, ways to explore. Anything else that you want to wrap up with before we say sayonara for this conversation?
I would say, again, and if you as a parent are really struggling with this, mentally, to find people to talk to,
Mhm.
and as yourself as well. And how do you navigate your own mindset
Yeah,
to change this? Because it's the great news is that, not every kid, you're seeing it more and more, and they're, instead of college signing days, now it's signing days. If they go into military, they go into trade. So I think it's slowly starting to change, but we still got a long
right.
way to go.
Emphasis on slowly, but hey, I guess some progress is better than no progress, right?
Exact progress, not perfection.
Right. Well, and here's the thing that I want to wrap up with on my end is, like, I know a friend of mine is walking this very path right now with her older kiddo. Um, and it seems like from what you're saying, like she is doing so many things that you're recommending. So if you're a parent listening
Mhm.
to this and you're in that space and you're like, oh yeah, I'm doing that. Like, these are the conversations that we're having, and they're not rolling their eyes at me overly much. you know,
Yeah.
I mean, they're teenagers. They're going to roll your eyes at you. It's just what it is,
Yeah.
you know. But if you're doing a lot of these things, good, keep it up. And when you're in a space where you're like, ooh, something feels a little funky, like reach out to somebody like Laurie who can give you some insight. Or the school counselors, like, or local resources can be advantageous too. So keep it up.
Yeah. Help
Awesome.
them create a plan. That's the bottom line is
Right.
if not college, then, work on a plan together. As
Right.
long as they're moving towards a plan, they have an idea, that's all that's great.
Hmm. Awesome. All right. So, like I said, shameless plug. First of all, thank you, Lori, so much for your time and your
Thank
insight
you.
this morning. And thank you for your support of Empowerthon and the Parent Tween Foundation. It's very much appreciated. So, for those of you tuning in, if you got some insights here, or even if you're in a space of just like, okay, I'm doing the right things, the best way that you can say thank you is by using the link in the description to go to the Empowerthon page and make a donation on behalf of Lori. And one of the we've actually got a little bit of friendly competition among our
Ooh.
participants, where we had offered that whoever ends up helping us raise the largest amount of money is that we're going to take 20% of whatever that person raises and donate it to a family focused nonprofit of their choice other than Parent Tween Connection. And so I'm scrolling because I forgot to look and double check it in advance. But Lori, you had mentioned an organization that if you happen to be our fundraisingist speaker
Yep.
for this,
Yep.
that you wanted to make a donation to the new 10th Foundation. Can you tell us what that is and give them a shout out so that folks know what they're supporting?
Yeah, so it's helping young underprivileged kids explore STEM activities, and also they go on trips. Like they go on trips to Egypt They learn entrepreneurship. It's just providing opportunities, amazing experiences for youth that otherwise would never have gotten it.
That's awesome. I love it. Thank you for listing them, for naming them. So again, if you're listening, if you help Laurie be that fundraisingist, it's like winningest, but it's fundraisingist. It's a new word.
I like it.
Participant. That's part of where, the 20% of her grand total is going to go to support another entity. Because, yeah, we're here to launch the Parent Tween Foundation, but golly, there are so many entities out there that are doing such amazing work. We're big believers that like none of us is going to help all the kids in all the ways that are accessible. So we want to lift others up as we grow. So Laurie, thank you so much. I'm so glad you were able to join me today.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it.
All right, everybody. Have a great one.